Today, we are talking about how to lose weight and feel great without dieting, spending hours at the gym, or feeling deprived. And so the title of this webinar is actually called Whittle Your Middle, which is all about, it's aimed for women who are in the 45 to 60-year-old range, who are starting to feel like you're gathering body fat around your waist, someplace that you've never had body fat before. And so the techniques that I'm going to be talking about in today's webinar are going to be specifically aimed at you. So if you want to get rid of belly fat, everything in here is aimed at you. But also, I want to share with you some other really simple and easy techniques, some mistakes and secrets that so many of us have grown up understanding that this is the way we lose weight and what to do instead, okay? So what I want to do right now is I want to share my screen so that you can see the slide deck. And let's see, where are we? We're right here. So hopefully you can see that. All right, so yeah, how to lose weight and feel great without dieting, spending hours in the gym, or feeling deprived. No one wants to do that, right? And so there we go. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is why we gain weight around our middle section, around our waist as we get older. I'm going to talk about what does work and what doesn't in order to get rid of it. And then at the end, I'm also going to give you some free resources and help in how to implement this information that I'm covering today. I have 2 more webinars coming up. So if you love this free information, I would love for you to join me. One's going to be on Friday and the next one is going to be next Monday. So stay tuned for that as well. Now, I do have one question or one request for you, and that is to please be present, eliminate distractions, take a look at this, ask questions. So I have the chat open and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And then also, you know, some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today is, I don't want to call it controversial, but it is stuff that is new. And so really thinking about, could this apply to me? You know, one of the things that's really super important that I always have to impress on my clients, so I work with women who are in between 40 and 60, and one of the things that I really have to share with them is that most of the information that we have about the way that the body works, all of the studies that are all about how to lose weight are done on college-aged men. And women who are between 45 and 60, our hormones are completely different. And so therefore, the information that works for college-aged men doesn't really work very well for us. And so all of the information that we've grown up with, like, okay, this is the gold standard of how we lose weight, that might not be the gold standard anymore. And so I'm asking you to keep an open mind so that you can feel good about losing weight and do it the right way. All right. So let me introduce myself. If we haven't met before, I am Elizabeth Sherman. I am a life and weight loss coach. And so what that means is that I'm a certified personal trainer. I'm a certified sports nutritionist. I am a certified health coach, and I'm also a certified life coach. And the reason why I think that the life coaching piece is so important is that stress has a huge impact, especially, we're going to be talking about this today in the webinar, but especially for women between the ages of 45 and 60, our stress hormones are so much more reactive. And how we deal with our problems, so family problems, work issues, financial problems, relationships, those types of things, how we think about our problems is going to influence our weight. It does. And how we think about our problems, how we deal with our problems. Are we, being active? Are we taking care of ourselves, or are we diving into, a tub of ice cream in order to cope with the stress of everyday life? And so when we can manage our life skills, when we can manage our problems more efficiently, then we can actually manage and take care of ourselves better. So that's why it's so important that I am a life coach, so that I can help my clients with those types of things as well. Okay. So as a life and weight loss coach, what I do is I help my clients in these different areas. So in terms of managing our stress, managing our sleep, managing how we eat, our physical activity, and then how we think about all of those different things. So I work with my clients on body image, as well as how we think about food, how we think about exercise. So think about it, like if we categorize foods as good or bad, we're probably gonna, not, we're gonna restrict those bad foods. And then what happens is when we label something as bad, it makes us desire it even more, right? You see that in advertising all the time in terms of having a guilty pleasure. And so what we really want to do is we want to destigmatize all different types of foods. All foods fit into a balanced diet, and all bodies are good. And so, and exercise isn't something that we do to punish ourselves for eating too much, but it's a way that we manage our stress. It's a way that we take care of ourselves. So that's just a little bit about our lifestyle habits. But, there's a lot more to it. And when we talk about total health, I think that there are three different components or three different pillars that go into taking care of ourselves and being able to lose weight. So one is our lifestyle habits. So our lifestyle habits were just on the previous screen, but our physical activity, the foods that we eat, how we manage our stress, and how much we sleep. And then we also have the mental shifts, again, how we think about food, how we think about our body, how we think about exercise, how we think about our problems. And then the other piece, the third piece on that, is our hormones. And that's the stuff that we really don't have a lot of control over. I think that everyone's body is completely different in terms of how, our body works. And so what I really try to do with my clients, and what I'm going to try and do today, is help you understand a little bit more about how your body communicates with you, so that you can then give your body what it needs for optimal health. And we're going to be talking about this, I think, in secret number 1. So I'm going to tell you about the biomarkers that I use with my clients in order to determine whether our hormones are kind of balanced or not. All right. So over the years, I've helped dozens of women, and I do that through helping them sleep soundly at night. So getting rid of insomnia, getting rid of sugar cravings, improving energy, managing our hunger, and then managing our stress levels and anxiety. So all of these things are tied together. Now, as you look at me, you may think that I was just born this way, right? That I'm naturally thin. But the truth is that I actually struggled with my weight for a very long time. I used to be a size 18 to 20. I really struggled with my weight. I just ate anything. I used to joke that Elizabeth and exercise didn't belong in the same sentence. And then what happened is I kind of went the other way. So once I started finding out about, having better health, I kind of went the other way, and I competed in a bodybuilding competition. And that led me down a completely different rabbit hole, which was food restriction and the restrict, binge, and regret cycle, which is when you restrict your food and then you restrict it so securely for so long that then one day you just dive head first into a tub of ice cream or guacamole or whatever it is that you really enjoy. And then you overeat and then you feel so terrible, not only physically, but mentally, because you're like, what is wrong with me that I had to do this? And through that process, then I actually came out the other end. And today I don't have any scales. I don't restrict my food. I go out to eat quite often. I don't think about food. I mean, I think about food. Everyone thinks about food, right? But I don't really obsess about food, about what I'm going to eat. I eat to make myself feel good long term, not just in the moment. And so these are the types of things that I help my clients with as well. And the reason that I do what I do, the beginning of my journey was actually my mom. And my mom died of breast cancer in 2021. I'm sorry, not 2021, 2001, so 20 years ago. And in that process, when she passed away, I started Googling. I was like, how do I not get how do I not get breast cancer? How do I not die of breast cancer? Because watching her struggle with that disease was so painful. It was so profound, seeing her body just trying to fight the disease. And I was like, it scared the bejesus out of me. I was like, I do not want to go down that path. And I could also see that if I kept doing what I was doing, which was nothing, that I would be in the exact same place as her. So her dying was really the genesis of my path. And so if I can do one thing in this world, it would be to prevent myself, but also anyone out there right now who is listening to me. If I can prevent you from getting breast cancer, I will have served my purpose in this life. But I can't stop at just one. I need to stop all of it. I know that it's going to be impossible, but I'm willing to try. All right. So this is my purpose in life. This is my goal, is to stop breast cancer from occurring in so many people, because being overweight is a huge risk factor for not only cancers, but also other heart diseases. Okay. And so I discovered the whole weight loss process the hard way. I would love to say that once I learned that being overweight was a huge indicator, risk factor to breast cancer, that I immediately changed my eating habits. I immediately changed my exercise habits, but that actually is not true. I had to go through lots of changes, and I had to skirt the system and try all the shortcuts and look for that magic pill until I figured out that there is no magic pill. So my goal today is to save you some time and energy. Okay, so the hard way here is seeking other people's opinions, thinking my body is broken. Like I thought that, there was something wrong with me, that my body defied science because it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing, which was when I gave it a vegetable, it was supposed to lose weight. When I went for a walk, it was supposed to lose weight, right? So thinking that my body was different because it didn't do what I thought it was supposed to be doing. And after years of working in this area, I've discovered that, as I mentioned before, all of the research on diets and exercise and how the body is supposed to work is done on men, that women are not little men. We aren't. Our bodies work completely different. Our hormones are completely different. And everything that we used to do before we were 40 years old is different now. So those techniques that you used to do when you were 20 and 30, like if you gained a little bit of weight, if you overate a little bit on the weekend, if you drank too much beer, you would just go out and run some more during the week and, reduce, do the whole calories in versus calories out thing. But all of that changes once we move out of those childbearing years. And so there are a couple different things that determine how we look and feel after 40. And we have influence over a few of them. And so just be aware that all is not lost. Okay. And the other thing is that we believe that what we're going through is wrong, meaning that we think that there's something wrong with our body because it's not doing what we think that it's supposed to be doing. And so I would just like you to imagine waking up in the morning and feeling like your old self, not feeling heavy and lethargic and tired from not sleeping. Being able to be in a room with a plate of cookies or brownies or whatever your kryptonite is, and being okay with it, not being obsessive about it, feeling in control of your hunger and cravings, not feeling like you have to have dessert, or not feeling anxious, not waking up in the middle of the night and having that insomnia and feeling just so much anxiety, right? All of those things we can manage. It's possible. And I've done it with myself. I've done it with many of my clients. So one of the things that we really want to know is that all health and fitness advice does not apply to us, okay? And what I mean by that is when you see studies in the newspaper, we need to be very selective. When people are talking to us on Facebook or Instagram, or we see ads on TV, that is aimed at the general population. Women between the ages of 45 and 60 have a very different metabolic profile. And so therefore, we have to really cherry pick the information that pertains to us. And so again, all health and fitness advice does not apply to us, okay? And even within that, every woman that I work with is completely different. And so health advice that I use for one client may be completely different for another. We just have to figure out what works for you. And the reason that we need different information is, again, most health and fitness advice or most health research is done on men. And most diet advice is geared towards the general population. And again, women over the age of 45 follow different rules than everyone else. And we make up a very small percentage of the population. And so therefore, we can't just take any advice that we get, that we see, right? Because it might not be the best for us, okay? So hormonal changes. What used to work doesn't work anymore. Okay, and the reason for that is we have genetic makeups, our diets are completely different, and the way that we manage our stress and our hormones. So all of these aspects are a few different reasons why we might gain weight around our bellies. So when you look at your mother, or you look at your grandmother, or your aunts, you might want to notice, what does their body shape look like? Okay, so when we're talking about belly fat, there are a couple different things that we will influence whether we gain weight around our middle. Again, it's genetic. So what is our family history, what we eat and when, how we handle our stress, and then the hormonal impact of that. So we're going to go through this a little bit. What doesn't work to reduce belly fat is doing more crunches, exercising more. So you've heard of spot reduction, right? Which is the idea that if we do crunches, if we work our midsection, then we will whittle our middle, right? That doesn't work. And so what we need to do, or the other thing that doesn't work, is cutting calories and then also fad diets. What also doesn't work are some stopgap procedures. So doing spa treatments like wraps, The waist trainer does not work. All that does is it pushes your organs together. Don't do that. And then procedures like liposuction and tummy tucks, they'll work for a time, and they'll get the fat cells out of that area. But if you still maintain the same number of calories that you're eating, your calories in versus calories out and all of that stuff, then what happens is you still gain weight, just not in that area, right? So what's the solution? I have 3 secrets for you. The first secret is CICO is broken. CICO stands for calories in versus calories out. Secret number 2 is you do not need to cut out all carbs and all alcohol in order to lose weight. And then secret number 3 is shifting your thinking so that we can manage your problems better. Okay, so let's go into each of these secrets. So secret number 1 is calories in versus calories out is broken. I'm sure that every single person on this who's listening to this right now, and tell me in the chat if this is true, that I know that this happened to me, that when I started to lose weight, I was like, oh, okay, well, if some is good, more is better, right? And so first of all, the idea behind calories in versus calories out is that if we take in the same number of calories that we expend, that we move, that our body burns regularly, so based on our basal metabolic rate and based on our activity levels and how much we're moving in a day, that we will maintain our weight. If we take in fewer, or if we take in more calories than we burn, then we will gain weight. And then the opposite would theoretically be true then, that if we burn more calories than we take in, then we lose weight. However, anyone who's done this before, raise your hand, tell me in the chat, say yes. See, I got a bunch of people here who are like, yes, totally doesn't work, because we all know that when we take in fewer calories, it may work for a period of time, but then our body's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so the idea that we need to balance calories that we take in with the calories that the body burns to manage our weight is fundamentally true. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say that calories in versus calories out doesn't matter. However, there are other things at play. And so calories in versus calories out is still the foundation of weight loss. However, it isn't the only law. And so food quality is going to have a huge impact on if we lose weight and where we gain it or where we lose it and how our body uses those calories. Okay. And our body, so what happens then is the food that we take in is going to have a hormonal response in our body. So in other words, what's gonna happen is based on the food that we eat, based on how we exercise, based on our stress levels and how much we sleep, those are all 4 different things are going to impact our hormonal response in the body. So if you've ever, for example, let's just take sleep, for example, when we don't sleep well, our body's cells don't regenerate properly. And when our body's cells don't regenerate properly, what happens is they don't actually create energy correctly. And so what will happen then is after a night of poor sleep, we may find ourselves getting those 3 o'clock munchies, right? For either something salty, carby, like pretzels or chips or something like that, or we may need something sweet, just again, depends on your kryptonite. So know that when we don't sleep well, our body creates a hormonal response that then impacts how we eat later on. And so all of these 4 habits, diet, exercise, stress, and sleep, impact one another and create this storm of hormones in your body. And so being able to manage those and pull them apart and really be able to balance them is gonna be huge, okay? Oftentimes, so this is another reason why calories in versus calories out is broken, is many diets will often take away one of the macronutrients. So either carbohydrates or fats or proteins, and that will create a hormonal shift in your body as well. Or over exercising will also create a stress on your body, and that will impact your hormonal balance. So be aware that yes, calories in versus calories out is still the foundation, but it's not the only law here. Okay, and so the body is not a seesaw. So you saw those calorie balance graphics, right? And so we think that if I lose weight by having fewer calories in than I have out, or we gain weight doing the opposite, but the body really is not a seesaw. And what we want to do is thinking that if some is good, more is better, right? We think that we're supposed to eat less and exercise more. That's all everyone has always told us, right? And so we do that, but then it doesn't work. The other end of the spectrum, which we don't want to do, is eat more and exercise less, right? So both of those situations really don't work very well. Occasionally, we can bounce into eat more and exercise more, but we really don't want to stay there either. We really want to eat less and exercise less, because these two, the eat more, exercise less, and eat less, exercise more, don't work long term, right? But these other two, going back and forth between them. So as I exercise more, and again, we don't want to think about exercise as a form of punishment. We don't want to think about exercise as a way of burning calories. What we want to do is we want to think about that as a way of managing our stress. And so we can have periods where we exercise more, and when we exercise more, we need to eat more along with that. And then there are going to be periods where we have rest, and when we eat less, or when we exercise less, we want to eat less along with that. And if you're actually paying attention to your hunger signals, this will naturally happen. And so what we really want to do is we need to balance our hormones. Okay, great. So how do we do that? I know that's the next question. So what we want to do is we want to check what I call CHESS. Okay, now CHESS is an acronym. And what we really want to do is, based on the stress, how we manage our stress, how we move, our physical movement, our physical activity, how we eat, and our sleep, all four of those things are going to impact CHESS, okay? And CHESS stands for cravings, hunger, energy, sleep, and stress or mood. And so what we want when our hormones are balanced, these are the 5 biomarkers that I work with my clients on, is when we have these in balance, so our cravings are low, our hunger or our appetite is low, our energy is stable, our sleep is stable, and so is our mood. So we don't want to have wild dips about our mood for absolutely no reason. And so when any of these things are out of balance, that tells us that one of these 4 things, our eating, our physical activity, our sleep, or our stress management, is out of balance. And so what we need to do is we need to correct the root in order to correct how we feel. And so I see it all the time. I see clients who are completely frustrated. They're not seeing progress. They continue to struggle. They think that there's something wrong with them, and they're resentful of other people who are successful. How many of us have gone on a diet with our partner, and our partner's like, oh, I lost 5 pounds just by blinking. And we're like, I gained a half a pound. And so I see it all the time with my clients who are women over the age of 45, is that it's so frustrating because we're following the advice for people not meant for us. We're following general population advice, not advice meant for women over the age of 45. Okay. And so when we stop counting calories, when we stop over exercising, when we stop our erratic eating and have unbearable cravings, we can stop having night sweats, we can stop having anxiety, we can stop having hot flashes. And so we need to stop counting calories and really focus on how we feel, really paying attention to eating just enough, not too much, and then also noticing how different food, how activities and things like that influence how we feel. Okay. So that was secret number one, is calories in versus calories out is broken. Secret number two is that we don't need to cut out carbs and alcohol. Okay. We all think that, right? We're like, okay, I need to lose weight. I'm just going to cut out all carbs and alcohol and sugar and everything that I love in life. And carbs are actually not the devil. In fact, we need carbs in our body. There is something called somatotype. And somatotype is what we're seeing on the screen right now. There are 3 different body types. On one side, we have what's called the ectomorph. The ectomorph is the long, lean person. You probably know someone like this, and they are like the quintessential marathon runner body type. They're long and lean. They don't have a lot of body fat, but they don't have a lot of muscle either. On the other side of the spectrum, we have what's called an endomorph. And an endomorph is someone who is stockier. They hold more muscle on them, but they also hold more fat on them as well. And then in the middle, we have what's called a mesomorph. And all of us are probably somewhere in the middle of that. Just to go back for a second, the endomorph is like the quintessential Olympic lifter. They're really big and stocky and, just have really solid musculature. So all of us are somewhere in the middle of that. Now, when we're talking about ectomorphs, the long lean person, they do really well on vegetarian and high carb diets. The endomorph does really well on high protein, moderate fat, low carb diets. And so what we need to do is we need to figure out how much carb or how much starch your body needs. Because if you were to put the ectomorph on a low carb diet, a no carb diet, they would walk around all foggy. These people do really well on vegetarian type diets. So they would do terribly on the Atkins type diet, versus the endomorph is going to do better on the Atkins type diet, on the keto type diet. However, put them on a vegetarian diet and they're just going to balloon up, or they're not going to feel really good either. They're going to have meat cravings. All right. So we just need to figure out for every one of us where we are on that spectrum. Okay. So as we get older, our bodies become more sensitive to insulin. And so let's talk about what insulin is. Insulin is a hormone in the body. And what it does is when we eat, our stomach absorbs all of our nutrients, all of the food that we eat, and converts that energy into glucose. Okay. And then what happens is it passes the stomach lining and goes into our bloodstream. And our body then releases insulin in order to get the glucose out of our bloodstream and into our muscles, where it can be used for energy. And then whatever is filled up with our muscles, because it fills up kind of like a cabinet, right? It goes and it gets put into the liver, and whatever is left over, then the body converts into fat. And so what happens is insulin then converts the blood sugar into stored energy. How we want to manage insulin, so the key to weight loss and weight maintenance is to have stable insulin levels, stable blood sugar levels. And so how we do that is first, we manage what we're eating through quality and quantity, meaning that you can have potatoes, you can have rice, you can have pasta, you can have treats, you can have brownies, but the quality of that food matters as well as how much you eat. Okay. So, and the second point here is what we eat with our carbs completely matters too, because if we eat 100 calories of carbs, our blood sugar is going to rise rapidly, and then the insulin is going to be released into our body, and then the blood sugar is going to fall, and then we're going to get hungry again. Versus if we eat that carb with something else like protein or fat, it's going to slow the absorption. Okay, so let me explain this a little bit more. So quality and quantity matters. Your body is going to respond differently to 100 calories of cake as it would 100 calories of broccoli, right? It's the same calorie load, right? But broccoli has more vitamins, more minerals, more nutrients in it, where cake has more sugar in it, more simple sugar. And so just be aware that where we get those calories from, the body is totally going to respond differently to it. And then the second piece is quality and quantity matter. So it's going to matter if you eat one cookie versus if you eat 10 cookies, right? So when we eat 10 cookies, that's going to produce more of a load, more of a stress on the body. And so we want to be really careful about that. So the advice that I have for you to start is to limit starch to 1 serving, to every 3 to 5 non-starchy vegetable servings. So what I mean by that is, so have a cookie, okay, but make sure that you're eating plenty of other vegetables that grow above ground. Tomatoes, broccoli, green beans, asparagus, lettuce, Brussels sprouts, all of those really great foods. Make sure that you're getting enough of those in order to counteract your carb needs. And then the other piece to that is limit your treats to 10 to 20% of your daily calories. And you'll probably notice that this will make you feel better. This is why we're doing it. We're not doing it to restrict, to be on a diet or anything like that, but you'll notice that when you limit the number of treats that you have, so you can still have treats, but we just don't want to have all of the treats, we will feel better, right? And then finally, what we eat with our carbs totally matters. So the don'ts are, we don't want to eat starch without protein, and we don't want to eat starch and fat together, because that will create a hormonal response in the body as well that's negative. We do always want to eat protein with our starch. So just be aware that we never want to have like spaghetti by itself. We always want to have some sort of protein with that pasta, all right? So again, managing your blood sugar, we need to figure out for everybody what your starch tipping point is. And this is something that I work with my clients on all the time, and that I'm going to be talking about in, I have a podcast coming out. It's going to be on January 11th. It's number 52, and it's called Is Sugar Addictive?, where I'm going to be talking specifically about your starch tipping point and that slippery slope that occurs when we have too much sugar in our diet and we start to crave it over and over and over again. But the other thing that we need to be aware of are 2 different concepts. One is called trigger foods and the other one is called buffer foods. Trigger foods tend to be foods that trigger a response that we need to eat more. So things that tend to be trigger foods and buffer foods, just in different people, are alcohol, chocolate, coffee, cheese, all those good things, right? So some people may find that if they drink alcohol, that they tend to overeat. So that would be a trigger food. Whereas other people find that if they have a glass of red wine, that it quells the appetite, that they don't overeat because of that. Now, something that I did in my whole journey was I needed to cut out trigger foods for a period of time, but then I was able to bring them back in again once I had the mental perspective around that food. For a long time, I really overate on peanut butter. I couldn't have it in the house. And so eventually I started to learn how to trust myself with it. Okay. And so that's what trigger foods and buffer foods are. Buffer foods are foods that they're not necessarily quote unquote clean foods. They're not healthy foods, but you know that you can control yourself around it and it's a little bit of a treat. So when we eat buffer foods, they kind of take the mental drama away from, okay, I can eat this and I feel good with it, right? So insulin could be responsible for having night sweats, your hot flashes, insomnia, mood swings, your cravings, so midday cravings, and then your out of control hunger. So, and then also lack of focus and productivity. So be aware that just changing the amount of carbohydrate that you bring into your diet, that you eat, could influence all of these things. And so I want to introduce you to one of my clients, Michelle. And Michelle, I love this story. So when we first started working together, she used to have like cereal for breakfast. And she was like, oh, I'm fine. You know, it doesn't really influence me anymore. Or, you know, carbs don't affect me. And so what we did was, I was like, you know, let's try having more protein in your diet. And so she shifted over into a more balanced diet where I think she was having eggs and maybe a piece of toast for breakfast. And then one day she went on a business trip and she found herself in the company kitchen, like eating pretzels at 3:00 in the afternoon. She was like, what is going on with me? Why am I doing this? And then she was able to trace it back to her breakfast that morning because she was traveling. She had eaten the breakfast buffet at the hotel, which she had eaten like yogurt and not granola, but oatmeal, which for all practical purposes is a very healthy meal, right? But there wasn't enough protein in it. And what happened was her blood glucose spiked and then it dropped. And then she got these cravings later on in the day. And so be aware that when we overeat carbohydrates, we may see that comes back to us later on. Oftentimes, when we find ourselves eating pretzels or something that wasn't on plan, we're like, what's wrong with me? I'm so weak. But sometimes it's a hormonal response. And so if we can clean up the diet piece and stop those things from happening, then we don't have to have the mind drama around it either, right? So anyway, that's Michelle. Once we were able to put that together, then everything worked just swimmingly after that. So what's really important here, though, is that, as I mentioned, everyone's body is completely different. And so we need to develop our own guidelines. So we need to stop looking outward for the rules, and we need to start being reflective about how we feel with our bodies. Okay, we need to be able to connect the dots with how food makes us feel. Okay, so discover what you and your body like. Stop listening to the rules outside. Like if you like dark meat chicken, eat dark meat chicken. Don't eat white meat chicken just because, excuse me, of the hiccups, just because that's what you're supposed to eat, okay? All right, so secret number 3, shifting your thinking for better balance. Okay, so as we get older, as we move into 45, 60, we become more reactive to stress. So as we get older, we become more sensitive to insulin and we become more reactive to stress. So things that used to roll off of our back as younger women no longer roll off of our back. It really impacts how our body functions. And so one of the things that was always really frustrating to me, and I talked a little bit about being a life coach at the very beginning of this presentation, but I want to talk about it a little bit more in terms of when we talk about self-care, we often talk about manicures and massages, okay? And I just don't think that that's helpful. I like thinking, well, I'm going to talk more about self-care in just a little bit, but yeah, self-care is way more than just manicures and massages. Also, when we're talking about your health habits, we want to talk about feelings, how we feel versus the result that's on the scale. And then the other mindset shift that we really want to make, and I've talked about this before, is today, is that exercise, we need to think about exercise not as a way to burn calories, but rather a way to manage our stress. And then the last piece is really prioritizing our sleep. And so if you watched my webinar yesterday, I had this graphic in there and I just want to go over it again. And the reason why many of us are unable to keep up with weight loss or with the diets, right, is because when we get stressed, all of a sudden then we are up in the middle of the night. And then when we don't have good sleep, we actually don't manage our stress better. It's kind of a yin and a yang thing. But then mid cravings kick in and we're like, I really need to eat something because I'm so tired. And so then we make poor food choices, right? And then we feel terrible, not only physically, but also mentally. And we don't feel like doing anything. And so then we don't feel like exercising. And then after dinner, we're like, oh, I want some wine or I want some treats, right? Because we're feeling kind of sluggish. But then at the end of the day, we feel wired and tired. Have you ever felt that? Like you're kind of buzzing, but you're still exhausted. And so you go to bed and then the cycle just continues. And so what we need to do, and so this is often why we are unable to keep up with our goals. And so what we need to do is we need to manage all of this a little bit better. So there's another hormone that I want to talk to you about today, which is called cortisol. Cortisol is what we call the stress hormone. And typically when cortisol will rise in the morning, and when we sense danger, the body will produce cortisol as a way to fuel our muscles in case we want to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. And it shuttles blood away from our organs, so away from our stomach and into our muscles. It also turns off our rational brain. So if you've ever been in an argument and you feel like you can't think or you can't communicate, that's cortisol rising. Because what happens then is the brain takes all of the rational brain goes offline and your emotional brain takes over. And you also might notice some physical sensations of the rise in cortisol, which is sweaty palms and heart palpitations. So just be aware that cortisol is another hormone that's in your body. And these are all of the things that cortisol will do when it rises. So types of stress. There are 3 different types of stress. There's chronic stress, there's acute stress, and then there's episodic acute stress. So chronic stress is brought on by like a long-term illness. Maybe you have to take care of a family member. Acute stress is like driving and running into traffic. So you have elevated stress for a minute, and then after it's gone, it's just gone. But what I find with many of my clients is this third one. And this third one, episodic acute stress, is actually just as dangerous as chronic stress. The thing is, though, that episodic acute stress is totally brought on by ourselves. Episodic acute stress is worrying. So constantly being in a state of low level worry or constantly having problems that keep popping up. Okay. And so this is what I see with a lot of my clients. When I ask them about their stress, they're like, I'm not really stressed, but it's all the stress that's actually going on in our minds. It's how we think about these tiny little problems that creates this episodic acute stress. And so this is a huge impact on our belly fat. Okay, so what is stress? Stress is how we think about our problems. Simply put, that's it. Stress is how we think about our problems. Because a problem, I don't know if you've ever done this, but a problem for one person isn't the same problem as for someone else. Like once you know how to deal with it, then it's, not that big of a deal. And so how we manage our problems is how we manage our stress. Okay, so there's something that I want to introduce you to today. It's called the thought model. And the thought model is how I work, is one of the tools that I work with my clients on. And what it means is that circumstances and events are completely neutral. They're neither good nor they're bad. We have thoughts about our circumstances and events, and our thoughts create our feelings. So in other words, it's raining out. Rain is neutral. How we think about the rain is what gives the rain meaning. So I can either think, oh, it's great. We haven't had rain in 3 months. We need the rain, which makes me feel good, right? Or I could be thinking, this sucks that it's raining because today's my wedding day or my daughter's wedding day or someone's wedding day. And so I don't really want to get wet, which makes me feel sad, right? And so our thoughts directly influence how we feel. Our feelings control how, or they influence our actions, what action we take. So an example of this, again, is the thought of this diet is going to work makes me feel motivated. When I feel motivated, I do the things that are on the diet. And when I do the diet, then I get the results from the diet. Okay. And our results, then how we think about our results will affect how we do things in the future. So 2 ways to manage our stress. One is practice self-care and also prioritize sleep. So when we talk about self-care, what exactly is that? I think about self-care as taking care of the future version of ourselves. And there's a really great PDF that I'm going to share with you at the end. It's called The 8 Basic Things That Healthy People Do. And this is everything that you need in order to take care of yourself. But also starting to focus on your future. So saying yes to feeling better, not to feeling better right now and eating, enjoying what you're eating, although that's important, but also asking yourself, is eating this going to make me feel better tomorrow, in an hour, next week, next month? Okay. The other piece is exercise. Exercise is not just about burning calories. Okay. See, the thing is that all of these health habits are connected. That when I over exercise, what that's going to do is it's going to cause more stress on my body. It's going to influence how I eat, right? Because I'm going to be hungrier. It can also adversely affect my sleep. So over exercising can influence negatively how I sleep. Okay. And then how we think about all of these things together, our mindset, our mind shifts are going to be influenced by this. So prioritize sleep. I can't say this enough, that if it's sleeping an hour or exercising for an hour, take sleep over exercise any day, okay? So how sleep influences our health. The problem with the lack of sleep, and I talked about this a little bit before, lack of sleep can cause influence in higher blood sugar. It's true. So it can also increase belly fat, decrease quality of life, right? We all know this. We all love sleep, right? And it will raise our cortisol levels. So how to sleep better. So one is create a sleep routine. It doesn't have to be complex. It can just be a series of health habits that help you to sleep better. Make sure that you practice good sleep hygiene. So have a dark room where it's cool temperatures. And then also notice your relationship between eating and sleep. Try not to eat more than 2 hours before bed. Try not to eat anything too spicy or too heavy. And try not to exercise too close to bed. Okay, that can interrupt your sleep as well, but that's highly individual. Okay, this is Haley. This is one of my clients. And what's really interesting about her story is that one night she was having she was having dinner with a girlfriend of hers, and one glass turned into two. And then the next night she slept terribly, which then made her feel sluggish, and she started craving food like we talked about before. And she just noticed this domino effect of having just an extra glass of wine that really disrupted like 2 or 3 days. And so, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I want you to be empowered to do those things. But when it comes to awareness, when it comes to really realizing that this is what's happening, that's so super important. So there's so much information here, and the problem with free advice is that we're not accountable and we don't do anything with it, and we really don't value it. So there's no skin in the game. So what I want to suggest is that you do one of two different things. So, or do both of these things. So one, I talked about the 8 basic things PDF. I'm going to invite you to download that. Go to elizabethsherman.com/habits. And I'm also going to invite you to come to my webinar on Monday, January 3rd at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 Central, 8 Pacific. Go to elizabethsherman.com/NYR to register for that. There's going to be more information, more good information there. And that is all I have. I run out of time, so I don't have time for questions, but I'm going to recommend that if you do have questions, that you put them into the comments here. I would love to answer each one of those individually. So have a great day, everyone, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.